Okay, and I'm going to hand this over to Anna from the Leicester Branch Library. She will introduce today's panelists.
Good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for joining us. My name is Anna Borum, and I'm the branch manager at the Leicester Library. We're really fortunate today to have this great panel of people talking to us about solar panels, which is something that we've been super excited about being a part of here in the library system. So today our panelists include Senator Julie Mayfield. She's going to be talking to us about energy legislation passed at the state level. We also have Doug Ager, who is the co-owner and CEO of Sugar Hollow Solar. He's going to talk to us about how solar panels work and different policies affecting usage and installation. We also have Jeremiah Leroy, who's the Sustainability Officer from Buncombe County. He's going to talk about the library solar panel project and other county sustainability efforts. And finally, we have Sam Ruark, who is the Executive Director of Greenbelt Alliance, who's going to be talking to us about solar panel installation as well. So right now, we're going to turn it over to Senator Mayfield to get started today. Thank you, Senator.
Great. Thank you very much. I'm so happy to be here to talk about clean energy and energy policy and where we're headed in North Carolina. And before I dive into the legislation that I'm mainly going to talk about, I'd like to set the stage a little bit and help you understand sort of the leading role that North Carolina has played in renewable energy and clean energy over the last several years. So just yesterday, I was at a celebration, 20th anniversary celebration of a bill called the Clean Smokestacks Act, which was a bill passed by the North Carolina legislature in 2002. And it required a significant ratcheting down of emissions from coal-fired power plants here in North Carolina. And as a result of that, over the last 20 years, we've seen, I think it was sulfur dioxide reduced by about 97%, nitrogen oxide reduced by about over 80%. And that is why we have clean air and visibility back here in Western North Carolina. A key piece of that legislation was that it allowed North Carolina to sue the Tennessee Valley Authority to get them to close some of their coal-fired power plants that were impacting air quality and in both environmental and public health here in Western North Carolina. So, that was sort of, I would say, North Carolina's first foray into serious energy and air policy back in 2002. Go forward a few years, and North Carolina was the first state in the South, and I think maybe even the only state in the South still to pass a renewable energy portfolio standard that set benchmarks for the utility, in our case, Duke Energy, to get a certain percentage of its power from renewable energy and energy efficiency over a certain period of time. And I think that was around 2007, maybe. And so again, only state in the South to do this. And then fast forward again to maybe about 4 years ago. And I should say that renewable energy portfolio standard bill is what put North Carolina on the map in terms of solar. The solar industry here exploded after that bill was passed. And we became, I think, pretty consistently for a number of years, the #2 state in the country in terms of installed solar. So that bill absolutely had the impact that was intended. Fast forward a few years after that, again, maybe about 4 years ago, and the legislature passed what was called House Bill 589 that took additional steps to advance solar energy. It was not a perfect bill. It was, like many of these things, was a compromise bill, but it also led us forward in terms of renewable energy. And then the thing that I want to talk about today, let me also put in there, this would have been back in about 2014, maybe. North Carolina passed what I think is still the only law in the entire country around the cleanup of coal ash. And you may say, well, what does that have to do with renewable energy? Well, what that did was it made burning coal a lot more expensive, and it incentivized power companies to switch from burning coal. And a lot of that switch went to natural gas, but it also helped to incentivize, again, the deployment of much more of more solar energy. So then fast forward to last year, 2021, and the legislature passed, again, a bipartisan bill, House Bill 951, that essentially codifies or turns into law Governor Cooper's Clean Energy Plan. So maybe 3 years ago, Governor Cooper set out to develop a clean energy plan, which was developed with the input of hundreds of stakeholders across the state over about a year and a half. That plan had recommendations for reducing carbon emissions and getting to carbon neutrality. And basically what we did with House Bill 951 was codify that and put it into law. And I'll go into more details, but just to tell you again how significant this is, we are the only one of 2 states in the South, the other being Virginia, that has a clean energy standard. And we are the only state, I think, in the entire country that has passed a clean energy standard when the legislature is majority Republican. So that gives you some sense of how momentous this was. And I had a front row seat to this. Very lucky in my first term to be part of the 4-person team of Senate Democrats working hand in hand with the governor's office that was negotiating directly with Senate Republicans to get this bill. So huge victory. And here's what the bill does. It does a number of things, but the main number one, most important thing that it does is it sets a goal for North Carolina's electricity sector. So again, we're really just talking about Duke Energy here, to reduce carbon emissions by 70% by 2030, and then to get to carbon neutrality by 2050. So what that does is it essentially shifts and majorly realigns the plans that Duke Energy has to produce to get us to those goals. So before this bill, Duke Energy only had its own internal goals, relatively recently established goals around carbon neutrality, but now it is state law, and they have to, every plan that they produce going forward about how they're going to meet our energy needs in the state has to meet those goals around carbon neutrality. And indeed, we are in a process right now, Duke is in a process with stakeholder input of putting together the first climate plan that will be made public next month. The draft of it will be made public next month, submitted to the Utilities Commission, and there will be an opportunity for public comment, and the plan, that plan will then be approved or disapproved by the Utilities Commission later this year. So that will be the first glimpse as to how we're going to get to carbon neutrality. That plan, the legislation contemplates that plan will be revisited every 2 years and can be revisited more frequently than that if need be. So that's the big thing. And again, now all of the incentives are realigned toward renewable energy, energy efficiency, and things like that. One of the second things that the bill does that is extraordinarily important is it decouples, at least for some of Duke Energy's revenue, it decouples their revenue from how much energy they sell. And so this has been a traditional problem with energy efficiency. The utility makes money based on how much energy it sells. And so it doesn't have a lot of incentive to reduce the energy it sells and help people use less energy. What this bill does is it decouples a portion of that income from the sales and creates what we call performance standards that allow Duke Energy to make more money if they meet certain goals. And those goals can be around energy efficiency. They can be around serving low-income communities. They can be around reducing demand. They can be around a whole host of things that that the Utilities Commission has never been able to consider before. So that's a really great piece of the bill. And then the third thing I'll say about the bill is that it creates a program that we have long wanted here in North Carolina called on-bill financing. And that allows homeowners who want to make energy efficiency improvements to their home, but can't afford it. So they can't afford a new $10,000 HVAC system, or maybe they can't even afford a new $3,000 high efficiency water heater or refrigerator or something like that. What this allows is for that homeowner to essentially borrow that money from Duke Energy to make that purchase, that upfront purchase, and then pay Duke Energy back with the energy savings that they have achieved through adopting that technology or making improvements to their windows or whatever the energy improvement is. So that is a really good step. The negative thing about the bill, and this is important, is that it does not do enough to protect low-income customers. Essentially, the legislature, over the objections of Democrats, pitched that issue to the Utilities Commission to try to figure out and to try to, in all of this new transition to clean energy, pitch it to the Utilities Commission to try to protect low-income people as we make this transition. So we will see how the Utilities Commission does that. I anticipate that we will need to come back to the legislature for more legislation that will protect low-income customers. But we're going to give the Utilities Commission a chance to see what they can do under this new framework. So I'll stop there and happy to entertain a question or two before we move on.
Thank you, Senator Mayfield. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, you can use the Q&A to put questions in, and we'll make sure that those get asked.
I do see that there are some folks using the raise hand feature. If you could type your questions in the Q&A, that would be great, since our mics and our cameras for the attendees have been disabled for today's presentation. I do have a question that came to me via email, and I can ask that here. It says, I have installed a large residential solar system on the home I am building in Candler. I am concerned about the proposed rate change being considered by Duke Energy, which would penalize homeowners like me. The rate change is based upon a questionable study showing that grid users are somehow financially penalized by solar users. This seems to be a negative incentive for solar installation and a backward proposal from Duke Energy. Can you please comment?
Yeah, and my guess is Sam can talk about this more than I can, but let me dispel a couple of or talk about a couple of things here. So a number of people are sort of pinning this on House Bill 951 and saying, you know, well, House Bill 951 produced this recommendation from Duke Energy, and that is not true. This is totally separate from House Bill 951. What is happening here is that the current structure, the current net metering structure that exists in North Carolina is that framework is set to expire at the end of 2025. And so the various stakeholders that are impacted by this, and so that's Duke Energy kind of on one hand, and then a number of clean energy organizations on the other, North Carolina Sustainable Energy Association, Southern Environmental Law Center, I think the Sierra Club is at that table. Those groups have been working together to essentially come up with a new program that will replace what we have now. And you know, I think on the environmental side, they're trying to get as good a program as they can for homeowners for rooftop solar. Obviously, Duke Energy does have this narrative that people with residential solar are kind of, you know, getting a little bit of a free ride. I disagree with that. I think, you know, they're just not counting a lot of the benefits of solar, and especially now with 951, having more solar on the grid is only good. So that's kind of what's happening here. There is a proposed settlement or a proposed agreement in front of the Utilities Commission It has gotten a lot of opposition from solar installers, like I'm sure Doug's company and other rooftop solar installers. The Attorney General, Josh Stein, has now weighed in and is asking the Utilities Commission to put their decision on hold so that his office can have more of a chance to look at it and perhaps have broader discussions about it. So that agreement is not final. That decision is not final. And I think it's going to get a lot more scrutiny. And again, Sam probably knows, or Doug maybe knows much more of the details of that than I do.
Great, thank you. We're getting a lot of really good questions. In the interest of time, we're just going to move on to one more question in this section,
Okay.
and then we're going to move to Doug, who's going to be presenting next. So hopefully he can refer back to the question you just had.
Mm-hmm.
But for you, Senator Mayfield, we did get a question regarding getting credit for better efficiency. Is the bill retroactive for efficiencies I've put into place in the last few years?
It is not. I'm sorry. The program, so what the legislation does actually is authorize the creation of the program. And so that is happening now or will be happening soon at the Utilities Commission. So it doesn't actually exist yet, but no, I'm sorry, you can't. I don't really know the answer to that because the program hasn't been created, but I would be shocked if it is retroactive.
Great, thank you. That was awesome information. Thank you so much for all of that. All right, we're going to turn it over to Doug Ager next. He will keep this conversation going.
Sounds good. Hey, everybody. Thanks for being here. I'm the co-owner of and CEO of Sugar Hollow Solar. We been in the industry about 10 years, and we install commercial residential PV systems, home batteries, and EV chargers. So I'm just going to talk a little bit about, I don't know, some of this is probably, stuff y'all already know, a lot of you, but I just want to, kind of go back to the basics here on kind of how all this stuff works. So yeah, if you want to maybe go to the next slide. Thank you. So, I think, some of this it's confusing around kind of, some, what is a solar panel? And I was kind of, maybe I got too into the weeds here on how all this works, but so there is a lot of solar hot water, which people also call them solar panels. So I think it's important to differentiate solar hot water, or some people call it solar thermal panels, which there's a lot in our community, and as opposed to solar PV or solar electric panels. And I think mainly what we're going to be talking about here today, or really all of it, is about solar electric, solar photovoltaic panels. So anyway, that's just trying to clarify that. I know there's some confusion there. Go to that next slide there, Jamie. So then also, I think that kind of differentiating between, utility scale solar and rooftop solar, and mainly what I'm kind of referring to and what we do at Sugar Hollow Solar is the rooftop solar. We do some smaller kind of ground mount systems, but these two areas are, there's different policies. Julie, Senator Mayfield talked some about the utility scale as well as the rooftop, but mainly what I'm going to be talking about here is rooftop, which is what's on the library. All right, we can go to the next slide. So this is, basically how these PV photovoltaic panels work. They just sit out in the field or on a roof and, just absorb the sunlight. And it's a pretty amazing thing. The electrons kind of break free, and it creates a current that creates electricity. It creates DC electricity, direct current, and then inverters switch that to AC, which is what houses use to create to power everything in a house or a commercial building. Go to the next slide. So this is kind of looking at how the majority of the solar going in right now it's all just tied to the the grid. So we call it like grid tied solar, which means that essentially, during the day when the solar panels are producing energy, the sun is shining on them, it goes through the inverter, going from DC power to AC power, and some of that power will get used right at the house. But if you're producing excess power at that time, it'll actually push it back onto the grid so that other people have the opportunity to use it. Yep. So that's kind of how that works. So yeah, you want to go to the next slide there. So Senator Mayfield touched on this a little bit. So the big policy right now in North Carolina that really has allowed at least the rooftop solar to really grow a lot is something called net metering, which is essentially, if you are producing, more power than you're using, that power gets pushed onto the grid and you get credits to use that power later. So, during the day when you're not there, or you're not using much power, you're pushing that power onto the grid, you're creating credits so that during the night or during the evening or the morning, kind of the peak times, you actually are pulling energy back onto the grid, but you're not paying for some of that because you've pushed that power onto the grid. So it's kind of a one-to-one situation as far as getting power for the same, that you're pushing it back onto it. The only utility right now that has this policy is Duke Energy, Progress and Duke Energy Carolinas. A lot of the cooperatives around Asheville do not allow this type of system. So that's just something to be aware of. All right, next slide. So these are some other kind of important policies and incentives that exist right now for kind of rooftop, residential, commercial, solar. There's a federal tax credit, 26%. It's going to go down to 22% next year, unless there's some legislation that comes through. There's also Duke Energy also still has a rebate in place that's run through kind of a lottery system, and it is set to end, I think, this year. Maybe next January might be the last one. And then a couple others is there is for commercial, there is an accelerated depreciation schedule for PV systems if they put it on their business. And then there's also this Rural Energy for America grant that's been around for a while, and it's for rural businesses, and it can be up to 25% of the cost of the system. So those are some other policies and incentives that are currently exist for solar. I think that might be the last slide. So yeah.
That was super helpful. Wow, that was great to know. Honestly, about the just basic mechanics of how solar energy works was really helpful to me.
Good. Yeah, the technology changes so quickly, and I think it's easy to forget. I'm still learning a lot, and I think it can be a little overwhelming how all this stuff works.
Yeah, let's pause here for a couple of questions before we move on to our next presenter. So Doug, we have a question: how much of the absorbed sunlight gets stored in the panels or inverter? If we have 2 sunny days followed by 4 cloudy days, does all of the absorbed sunlight during sunny days get stored, or some proportion of it?
Yeah, so it doesn't actually get stored. So you either use it, in the house, or it gets pushed onto the grid. So you're kind of using the grid as a battery. There's no, for most of what we do, a lot of people, back in the kind of early days of solar, you had to have a battery that you charged, and then you could use that battery at night. But now there's really no batteries, so you're either using the power when you're producing it on your roof, or you're pushing it back onto the grid for others to use. Generally, if you don't it gets more complicated. There are home batteries that you can install, and then you can store some of it there if you want to. There's other options, but typically what we do is these grid tied systems that don't have batteries.
Thank you.
All right, well, I think we're going to move forward to our next presenter. And again, we hope to have more questions at the end. We've had a lot of questions coming in, so hopefully we'll get to go through all of those at the end. So our next presenter is Jeremiah Leroy with our Buncombe County Sustainability Officer.
Thank you very much. It's great to be here with everybody, virtually anyway. So as far as what Buncombe County is doing, I wanted to give you guys just a sort of a snapshot of the things that we're doing to sort of try and meet some of these big, aggressive, ambitious goals that we have for creating more renewables in our community and sort of transitioning to a more clean energy future for all of us. And some of you may know this already, but the county did adopt some pretty ambitious goals, right? So we have a resolution internally to reach 100% renewable energy for our own internal operations by 2030, right? And so that's, you know, for those of you who work in this field, 2030 is right around the corner. So we've got a lot of work to do in a short period of time to do it. We also adopted a resolution to try and reach 100% renewable for our entire community by 2042. And so when it came time to figure out how do we have a direct impact on this and what steps can we take as a local government, you know, what levers do we have to pull to try and accomplish these goals? So first thing we do is look in-house, right? Obviously the county owns a lot of buildings. You know, we are spread out throughout Buncombe County. We work with a lot of other local government agencies who are funded either directly through the county, or we handle, for example, their construction process, like with AV Tech, some of the school systems. We hold their debt, we pay their utility bills. So we've got direct relationships with these organizations. And we said, okay, we wanted to look at this concept of aggregated procurement for solar and see if we could have it make an impact. Aggregated procurement is just a fancy way to say bulk purchasing, right? If we do a lot of these at once, can we see a savings to a point at which we can make a really good, not only environmental argument, but financial argument for getting solar on a lot of these facilities. And so we sort of undertook this process. It's I guess right at about 2 years ago that we really started digging in and determining, you know, what makes sense. Now, not every facility makes sense for solar. Some of them, there's too much shade, and you don't want to cut down a bunch of old mature trees. Some of them are just oriented improperly. Some of them, frankly, they just need a new roof. And so, you know, you don't want to put solar on when it, you know, the roof comes first, right? So we went through this process, identified a ton of facilities that we had that we thought made really good sense to at least do a feasibility study on. And where we landed was that we had identified, and we did this in partnership with the city of Asheville, by the way. I want to give them credit where credit's due. We identified approximately 47 facilities, 47 different facilities all over the county. And that included libraries, community centers, some of our training centers, some of the facilities at AB Tech, schools. So you name it. We spread these 47 projects out throughout Buncombe County. And we essentially undertook the process of doing the initial design work, determining structural capacity, doing a financial analysis, trying to budget, what are these projects going to cost? What's the return on investment for these projects? And over the course of several months, we put together sort of a package to take to our Board of Commissioners and say, here's what we think we can do. This is what we think it's going to cost. This is what we think the return on investment is going to be. Where it ended was about a $10.5 million investment to get all of these projects done. But where we saw significant savings over the life of these systems, there was a return on investment of over $14 million during that life, a net $14 million savings. And that's being conservative. We tried to do this in a very conservative, you know, expecting utility rates to escalate over time, you know, 2 to 3%. They tend to go up higher than that, as most of us have seen on our bills. But it was a terrific project, and we're still in the process of that construction, right? So obviously building 47 solar projects is a cumbersome task. So we're well underway. The process of interconnection with Duke Energy takes several months, and as you all know, trying to pull this off during a pandemic when the global supply chain is a little off and things are taking a little longer. All things considered, I think we're moving along swimmingly. And of course, that's one of the reasons that these folks asked us to come today, is because our libraries all have solar on them, which is just amazing, and something we're very, very proud of. And so, you know, we felt like this was just the beginning, right? This was a proof of concept, so to speak. You know, the largest aggregated procurement of public facilities in the history of North Carolina, for sure, but still just a proof of concept for us. To say that this can work and that we can do this and that we can make a real impact in our community by doing this. And long term, not only that, we can save taxpayer dollars on these utility bills. So next up for us is to do kind of this same thing again. I'm actually starting tomorrow. I'm going out to Buncombe County schools all over the county because our Board of Commission was so pleased with this process that they adopted an additional resolution that all school systems should have solar on all viable buildings by 2025. So again, pretty aggressive timeline. And so we are in the process now of working with Buncombe County schools, Asheville City schools, AP Tech, to get solar on as many viable buildings as possible. And again, if they aren't viable yet, and there's a roof repair to be done, they're next in line, right? And so that's a part of that process for us. It's very exciting. It's a ton of work, and you know, we'll see how it all shakes out in the end. But we're very excited about the work that's ongoing. And just as a side note, and it's not a side note, it's a pretty cool project. We did get into the utility scale business as well. We don't have a lot of those opportunities in Buncombe County or in Western North Carolina in general, honestly, because we simply don't have the topography for large utility scale systems. You know, there's not 100 acres of flat land in Buncombe County. It's tough to find out here. But what we did have was a retired landfill that has not been in use for many, many years and cannot be used for anything. Obviously, you can't develop on an old landfill. Oftentimes these things are turned into, you know, recreational facilities, parks and things like that. But we saw it as an opportunity to kick the tires on a potential utility scale development. And it's been many years in the making, but it's finally under construction. We have a 5 megawatt utility scale solar farm going in at the old landfill in Woodfin. And it's, again, 5 megawatts by utility scale standards is relatively small, but it's a big impact for our community. So something we're really excited about. And that's kind of where we're at. We've got a ton of solar work going on. We've got a ton of solar work coming into the future. And we're very, very pleased and very excited to have the support we have from our Board of Commissioners, that they've made this a priority, and that, you know, we've got the support we need to get this great work done. So happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Jeremiah. That's just such interesting work about the landfill and the solar project. And I know it's been a lot of work, and it's great to have you with us to talk about it. Just as a reminder for our attendees, that Q&A button is in the middle of your black bar down at the bottom of the screen there. If you have any questions for Jeremiah or any of our panelists, go ahead and throw them in there. We do intend to get to all of them. We're just going to do a couple in between each speaker, but at the end, we'll have time for a longer Q&A process. There are a couple of questions in here now, and I'll go ahead and ask one, and this may be for you, Jeremiah, or it may be for any of our other panelists. Does an average rooftop PV array actually produce excess that is sold back to the grid, even on days with constant usage? For instance, running HVAC, household bathing, laundry, etc.
I think Doug's probably the best person to answer that question, but the simple answer is that it depends. You know, right? Like, what's the usage of the home? You know, are we talking a very energy efficient house? How big is the system? You know, there's a lot of variables that would go into that, but I would lean on Doug for that question.
Yeah, I think did it say it was was it the average system? What was the question? Was it? the
I'll
beginning?
pull that back up real quick. I believe average, yeah, average rooftop PV array.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jeremiah is, it just depends. I would say, it's, the panels are getting more efficient and they can, produce more in smaller area. So I would say, I don't know if it's the average, but it's, it's getting close to the average if, we're probably not quite there yet, but it's starting to get there.
Jamie, I saw a question about potential statewide or local rebates or other cost mitigation for homeowners who wish to install solar. I can tell you this is something we've talked a lot about internally in terms of, what opportunities for rebates are there. Again, I'm sure Doug knows a lot about the rebate program that Duke has available and the absolute cluster that it's been over the last few years to try and get that rebate and the sort of competitive nature of it. And they're actually doing it as it's like a lottery system now for residential anyway, because of the sort of massive appetite for that program, which just tell us this is something that people are really hoping to get. I can tell you that on a local level, we don't actually have the legal authority to do rebates for solar as a local government. I wish we did, because we'd probably have a rebate program if we did. What we have explored is things like returning fees to people, right? So whether it's like permits and inspections kind of thing, where you've got to pay to get an electrical inspection done or something like that, we can return those fees to people as a quote unquote rebate. But what we've discovered honestly is that it's just not enough to move the needle for folks. When you're talking about a system that may cost $15,000 or $20,000, a $100 rebate doesn't really move the needle for folks. So, honestly, that's just something that it would probably have to come from a state level rather than a local level for it to be an effective program. Either that or, again, sort of enhancing what the utility, for example, is already doing, I think would be great. It's something we advocate for a lot. And that's the other part of what the Sustainability Office in Buncombe County does. We do mostly solar, right? I'm an office of one, so I got a lot of projects going on. And so solar is like 90% of my life. But the other 10% of my life is advocacy work. And that is working I participate in as Senator Mayfield mentioned, Duke Energy's carbon plan, right? I'm participating in that process. I'm actually a part of the on-bill tariff, the pay-as-you-go sort of working group for that program that Senator Mayfield mentioned as well. So we do a lot of state and utility level advocacy work because that's frankly where the big changes come from, right? Like those are the things that make the huge impact at a local level, are state and utility level policies, and that's how we're going to meet our goals. That was way long of an answer that was needed, but that's what you get when you let me talk.
That was great, Jeremiah. Thank you for all that information. It's really cool drilling down on this topic from all these different levels. So our last presenter today is Sam Ruark, who is with the Greenbelt Alliance, who will talk about specific opportunities for BIPOC homeowners in Buncombe County. So we'll turn it over to him.
Hi, everyone. It's so grateful to be with you guys today and appreciate the opportunity to be on a panel with such great community leaders focused on clean energy and sustainability. So I'm the executive director for Greenbelt Alliance, a local nonprofit focused on advancing sustainability in the community through sustainable living and green building, climate justice. We have a variety of programs, including Greenbelt Homes, Appalachian Offsets, which is a carbon offset program, where we funded a solar system for Isaac Dixon Elementary School last year. Blue Horizons Project, which is a campaign for clean energy, and Energy Savers Network, which is focused on weatherizing low-income homes. The low-income solar program I'm going to talk about today is called Neighbor to Neighbor. And it's an outgrowth of two initiatives we have going on. One is the Energy Savers Network program, which is the weatherization effort we have. We have weatherized over 800 homes in Buncombe County since 2016. And this has been funded primarily through contracts with the city of Asheville and Buncombe County, and also some grants and some private donors as well. In 2021, we launched a program called Solarize, and this was a campaign to generate interest in installing solar energy. We had over 750 people contact us and say they're interested in installing solar on their home in Buncombe County. And out of that, we whittled it down based on the site and the needs of the folks and the ability to pay for it to 180 homes. And so we installed 180 solar systems in 2021 and then the early part of 2022. And then during that process, we had a group of folks saying, we really want to be able to make this available for low-income families as well. And since we already have a group of clients from Energy Savers Network, we've identified that really have high energy burdens, meaning they pay a lot more of their energy costs per month for utility bills than the average person in the county. We wanted to be able to make solar available for those folks as well. And so through a coordinated effort and funding from Buncombe County primarily, and also from assistance from the city of Asheville too, and 2 local real estate firms and some private funders as well, we were able to install 12 solar systems for low-income families. These are families and households that, they essentially had weatherization work, and then they own their own home, but they were good sites. And so they, they have good roofs and, have access to the sun and, have high energy bills. And so we're able to install the solar system for those folks. And that program being so successful and so needed for the community, we applied for some ARPA money, the American Recovery Plan or the Coronavirus Recovery Plan, the funding that Buncombe County and the city of Asheville have received from the federal government and the Treasury to support various initiatives. And so we applied for some money for heating assistance for the families we serve and the households we serve, and then also solar energy systems. So we got enough money to fund 10 solar energy systems over the next couple of years for low-income households, and also additional money for heating system upgrades as well. And we've also applied for money from the city of Asheville. We're waiting to hear back from them. If they provide the funding, we will be able to do an additional 10 to 15 solar systems. We also are raising money from private sources, which has been very helpful. And so if anyone on this call or anyone would like to fund low-income households to receive solar energy, we're receiving that money and channeling it into those projects. We're fortunate that we put out a request for proposal to select a solar contractor to do the work with, and Doug and his team at Sugar Hollow Solar will be the installers on this project. For the households we select, they'll be owners of the household. They will have good roofs, or we actually have some extra funding to provide roof upgrades if we need to do that. We got that money from the Dogwood Trust, and then it also be free of shading. That we had encouragement from Buncombe County to focus on BIPOC households, and so focus on Black, Indigenous, and people of color households to receive this funding. And so we pay for the solar system upgrades 100% through the money that the county's provided and through the ARPA funding. This initiative is also part of something called the Blue Horizons Project, which is this community campaign focused on how do we achieve a clean energy future? How do we meet the goals of the city and the county, these goals of 100% renewable by 2042 for the community as a whole? And, we're starting at about 5% right now. So we have a long way to go. And so what we're doing is we're analyzing what are the programmatic, the financial, the technical means, and any policy changes also needed to be able to reach this goal. We've done an initial analysis in order to be able to meet the goal. If it's just from solar, based on current, needs of the county, that'd be about 6,500 gigawatt hours of solar needed, which is about 16,250 acres of solar panels to produce all that power. So, you need a lot more than just the acreage and the panels. You need, you need inverters, you need hardware, you need the ability to finance it, things like that. And so, if we just look at this as a big whole, the county has 422,000 acres, about 4% of the land area will need to be dedicated to solar in order to be able to power all the needs in the county. Lots of changes have to happen to do that, but we're working on those in collaboration with the folks on this call, like Jeremiah and Doug, and in the bill passed 951 in the state, it helps motivate Duke Energy to really change their operations as well. It's like they're like a giant ship that needs to turn, and they're turning very slowly. And we hope they don't hit the iceberg, and we don't hope it all hit the iceberg. But it's like changing this massive system. It takes a lot of work, but things are in place to start doing that work. And we're grateful that our work here at Greenbelt Alliance, we're able to not only just have solar available for households that can really afford it, but we're also able to help support low-income households to also receive the benefits of clean energy. So at this time, I'll stop my talking and open it to any questions or any panel discussion.
All right, thank you so much, Sam. The work that you're doing with Greenbelt is just incredibly interesting and impactful. We're going to go ahead and open up our Q&A, and we'll try to get through as many questions as we have in the next 10 minutes. So if all of our panelists want to pop back on here, and as a reminder to our folks in attendance, that Q&A button is in the middle of that black bar on the bottom of your screen. Go ahead and type your question in there. And I'm just going to start at the top here, and we'll see if we can plow through. And these questions are for any one of our panelists. First question. We are in the process of installing solar panels. If North Carolina is suggesting that they are pioneers in sustainable energy proposals, why are the proposed changes to net metering very beneficial to Duke Energy and negative to solar energy users? In essence, Bill 951 not really supportive of urging people to get solar.
So I'll start this. So again, House Bill 951 doesn't have anything to do with what is in front of the Utilities Commission right now. Totally separate, totally separate. What's in front of the Utilities Commission now is there because the rules that we have around net metering are set to expire in 2025. And the energy advocates are trying to tackle this issue early to try to get as good a replacement process as they can at the Utilities Commission. Sam might be able to verify this. My understanding is that in every state where the sort of beneficial net metering rules that we have right now in every state where those rules have come to an end, the replacement program has not been as beneficial. The utilities have a great track record of success with this argument that individual rooftop solar projects actually cost other people money, that we are somehow drains on the system and we don't support ourselves. And I'm saying us because I have solar on my house as well. And so we are, the advocates are trying to craft as good a replacement system as they can. But it's going to be a challenge. I'm very hopeful that Josh Stein, the Attorney General, has jumped into this. He, when he starts throwing his weight around, he tends to get really good results. So I'll stop there and see if Sam wants to add anything.
Yeah, what you mentioned, Julie, is very comprehensive, and I feel it really sums everything up. The rules being drafted and proposed by Duke and some of the other energy advocates, shift a lot of the focus from, to commercial and industrial solar, which is a lot cheaper than rooftop. And so that's when they're focused. It's also a lot easier for Duke to manage that solar as it comes on the grid versus lots of different types of, lots of different rooftop systems. However, having solar on homes is part of the strategy for meeting our clean energy goals. And so it is hopeful that Josh Stein's office has weighed in. There's also a lot of local and regional and statewide solar installers have request the Utilities Commission to look at this again. So by no means are these rules final. A lot of things, are updated over time. So it is good that people are weighing in on this. And so, the ink is not dry on any of this. It's still to be determined.
All right, well, we have another question that is sort of maybe a follow-up or ties in a little bit to that question. Is there any organization which advocates for private solar system owners in addressing problems encountered in dealing with Duke Energy? And that's a question for anybody, if anyone has an answer.
Well, we've had to do quite a bit of that over the past year or so. Running the Solarize campaign, they're seeing things have gone fairly well for a lot of systems, but not so well for others. And so we've had to, being the organization running the Solarize campaign, we've had to have conversations with Duke and with the installer and with the homeowners and try to essentially ensure that the systems are installed as intended, and that Duke is providing the interconnection agreement in a timely manner, and that the rebates that are applied for are received as quick as possible. Typically, the solar installers themselves, when not Sugar Hollow and others, if a client, a homeowner or business hires, Sugar Hollow, for instance, to do their solar system install, Sugar Hollow then is the entity that, is collaborating with Duke on making sure that the system, has the interconnection, gets the new meter, gets the rebate if that's applicable, and all those things. So they're really the turnkey on the individual projects.
Maybe the other thing I would add to that is that the rooftop solar providers like Sugar Hollow Solar and Sundance and all the other folks are they're a pretty powerful force when they come together, and as they have on this proposed agreement. They have intervened as a group at the Utilities Commission, and so that they are essentially the voice for homeowners, homeowners and who have and want rooftop solar, because that's their business. So.
All right, our next question. Do you see shortages of solar panels in the future? Financially, I'm wondering if material shortages like silicon, increasing demand, supply chain problems, and general inflation make it necessary to have solar installed now while panels are available.
I can speak a little bit to that. Just to make sure I'm unmuted. I don't, there could be some supply chain issues kind of in the short term, but I don't see that as a long term. We're really not having too much difficulty getting solar panels right now. Prices are going up a little bit. I think that's true, for a lot of things, but as far as just being able to get them, yeah, shouldn't be a problem.
Yeah, I would echo that. I would say that just in the experience that we've had at the county trying to get lots of projects done simultaneously, it hasn't been about the lack of panel availability. It's been shipping issues, things like just delays in getting them here that have, just taken more time than we would have originally expected when we contracted for the project. And there have been some increased costs here and there based on shipping delays and things of that nature, but I don't foresee like the actual panels themselves not being available. It's just, are they available at the time you need them right then and there, or will there be occasionally delays, which we're seeing across the board. This is not a solar panel thing. This is a global issue, and so the solar industry has not been immune from that. But as those lines begin to sort of unkink globally, then I don't have any. If we really were scared of those long-term impacts, we wouldn't be looking at 30 more projects on schools right now. So we would be very terrified of that. But we don't see that as being like a major impediment. It's just it's a speed bump, one of many that we've had over the last couple of years.
See, another part of that question was, when is the right time to install? And I think a lot of people try to use a crystal ball to figure out, is the price going to come down? What about the rebates? What about tax credits and all these other questions? And essentially, my understanding is that now is the time. It's not really a time to delay because the prices are good. There's people doing the work. We need this renewable energy going on the grid, ASAP. So delaying for another year or two, thinking it might get better then, is not really going to help you. It's better to just do it now.
That's a great point. We have one last question that I think, maybe you could touch on, Doug. Probably this is for you pretty quickly, but helpful question for homeowners. What kind of maintenance is required for solar panel upkeep?
Yeah, so for solar PV, we talked a little bit about the solar hot water. I talked a little bit about the solar hot water at the beginning, but for solar PV, there's really very little maintenance involved. Once everything's set up and running well, there's no moving parts. They just kind of sit up there. It's all just, electric. So there's wires. So there's really very little maintenance required. Some people, over time, they'll, sometimes you'll get some, a little bit of like mold and stuff on the panels, but it really doesn't cause much of an issue. You can get up there and wash it off and stuff, but pretty minor maintenance issues.
I think Doug's, I use that exact same term all the time. Fewer moving parts. I use that for electric vehicles when I talk about them as well. And the reduced maintenance required, right, is just when the fewer moving parts you have, the fewer things that can go wrong. So, they're very efficient. They're very long lasting. I mean, there's a reason that these systems are on rooftops for 30 plus years often. And it's because they're so low maintenance and easy to they just work. They just do their job, so if maintenance is a concern, take that off your list of things of things you're concerned about, whether or not to do solar.
I mean, we are right at 12 o'clock and that was our last question. So that round of applause. I want to thank all of our panelists today, Sam, Doug, Senator Mayfield, Jeremiah. Thank you to all of our attendees for coming and for your engaging questions. As I said in the beginning, we have recorded today's presentation. So in a couple of days, you'll be able to find this link on the Public Library's YouTube channel. So if you want to share this information with those that weren't able to make it or refer back to it, that's where you will be able to find it.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thanks for having us.
Thanks for deciding to have solar on the library here.
Mm-hmm.
Nice work. Good work, everybody.
All right. Good afternoon and thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Bye-bye.